for both interviewing for a job as well as interviewing for a project. That's the really fun part, interview process. You'll learn as you get into the industry, you have to interview for your life to win a project. And that's when it gets really fun. So we'll talk about interviewing a little bit. So, well, at this point, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. I majored in computer science and visual art. How I ended up here is very random in the architecture industry. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I took the first job out of college, which was an admin job for an investment banking firm. And I quickly found out that was not my industry. It's kind of a cutthroat industry. So I just started looking for their jobs, and happenstance saw an office manager job at a really small firm in San Diego called IS Architecture. And there were only about 5 people there. They needed somebody to be the everything person. I thought I can do that. So I positioned my admin job to make it look like I could do that job, because I knew I could do that job. I maybe didn't have all the skills, but I knew I could. So I tried my best to make it seem like I was well positioned for an office manager job, and I got the job. So then fast forward 15 years later, what started as a job where I was responsible for answering the phones, all the office management things, all the HR duties of a small firm, and like billing, accounting, all of those things, slowly, little by little, because it's a small firm, you get a chance to do everything. So I started doing the marketing. I did all the proposals, I did all the contracts. Eventually, I started doing all the business development and bringing the work in. I was that first contact. I was the face of the firm who would be able to communicate the value we could offer to a client. So someone comes, I want to build my own house. How can I do that? What can you do for me? Or they come to us and say, my house is historic. I want to remodel it, but what's the right way? And I recognized that was the most fun part of my job, was when I got to spend time with people that called randomly and tell them about what we could do and how we could help. So yeah, the story is, fast forward 15 years later, I realized, hey, I really like this part about my job. I didn't know it was called business development at the time, but talking to people, learning more, I finally did find that out. And I decided to rebrand myself and reposition myself to be a business development person. Executive, manager, whatever you want to call it, but I wanted my job to be business development. And that's where I am today at HPI. And I love my job. I can't believe I get paid to go hang out with people, talk with people, play golf, help people with the skills that I know my team has. So it's definitely, it was a journey to get here, but I share that so you understand a little bit about the perspectives that I'll share today. So coming back to the screen, this is number 1, building relationships and networking. This is something that just get ready to do it and be ready to network all the time. It doesn't mean you have to go and be outgoing. Networking doesn't mean being outgoing and high energy, because I know for many, it's not easy to be, I guess, kind of how I am. I'm like this all the time. This is me all the time. But I know a lot of people are not. It's not easy to kind of put yourself out there. So just some things that you can remember is you want to always build relationships, not necessarily just collect business cards. You're here to actually build a relationship, kind of like how you would with a friend, build a friendship with somebody first and foremost. And there's lots of ways to do it. But I think these are some of the most important things that are crucial to that, is listening. So practice active listening. And I don't know, does anyone here have an example of what active listening means as opposed to in a conversation? You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and mention it. But listening as opposed to hearing what someone's saying and waiting for them to finish so that you can say your spiel. You want to actively hear what someone's saying. You almost want to make sure you are appreciating what they're saying. So if somebody's telling me, I love baking apple pies, well, I'm gonna say, really? Well, why? Why do you love baking apple pies? What, and what other pies do you love to bake? What is it that you love about baking apple pies? Yes, thank you, Tony. Paying attention in a particular way on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So back to the pie analogy, you know, I'm gonna care and pay 100% attention to why that person loves baking pies. And I'm gonna ask questions that I'm gonna wanna know genuinely, like, what is it about baking pies that you love? And that's gonna continue the conversation naturally, and that's gonna allow you to just have a realistic conversation, because again, you may do business with somebody later, you may get hired by someone later, but so this is not specific to your interview. Don't do that in your interview. But when you're networking with someone, this is just something to keep in mind. Actively listen, actively appreciate what someone else is saying, and don't just wait for your turn to speak about whatever it is you want to say. Some other things. I always like to think of how I can add value, and that could be, how can I help in this conversation? How can I offer something useful, a useful piece of advice? If somebody's looking for an architect and I'm not an architect, well, let me see how I can help you find an architect that can help you. Or if you know someone looking for a job and I'm not hiring, let me see if I can help you find someone that is hiring, and let me connect you too. So that's always something that is very under the surface, and I put it out there. Well, what can I do to help? Sometimes I just say that out. I just think it's important for you to always be thinking of what value you can add. And I say this, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call, because it is so easy to text and send an email. And we're all Zoom fatigued. That's a fact. But sometimes it's just so nice to just pick up the phone and call someone, and often they answer, and you can have a great conversation and connect and build that relationship. Virtual presence. Okay, switching gears a little bit. So this is going to be in the context of, oh, Heidi, you have a question. Remembering those key facts about people. I did try to study about mnemonics and memorization. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But key facts on what you can remember about people when you're talking, and especially if you're meeting a ton of people in a conference situation or an event situation. One, be actively listening so that you're hearing what they're saying and you're appreciating what they're saying. Oh, so you do have 2 kids. And how old is he now? And you actively being interested in that conversation and in that person will help you remember. And a way to just make sure is, as soon as you're done with the conversation, I always carry a pen in my pocket. If I did get their business card, I write everything down on the back of this business card. Went to this school, loves baking pies, has 2 kids, wants to be a surfer, and retire soon. And I'll write down these things because that gives context. Or I write down what we talked about. We talked about Disneyland, because I actually have lots of conversations with people networking in the industry about Disneyland, because my generation grew up on Disney, and there's so many of us out there, but it doesn't always come up. But if somebody does talk about Disneyland, I'm gonna write that down so we can talk about it again at the next time. That's a good question. So virtual presence in the context of an interview, or in this case on Friday, we're going to be face-to-face in very short time frames. Some things that are really basic. What would your mom tell you? Sit up straight, have good posture, have good lighting if you can. So don't have a window behind you. In this case, I have a light that I purchased for 20 bucks online, one of those selfie lights that I attached to my computer, because I'm in a really dark corner of my office. But if you can position yourself to have window light, I used to be a photographer, and window light is always your best light. So face the window. But having good posture and smiling does wonders for your energy. You don't necessarily have to talk with your hands and be super engaging and interactive with your body language, but you do want to have confident body language and good posture. So that helps. It communicates a lot. It communicates the energy, that something that's unspoken, that whoever's on the other side of the screen, they're going to feel it. And it's not necessarily something you can pinpoint, but they'll feel a more confident energy coming from you from just these basic things. And I always have to hit home, be real, be yourself. You know, it's so hard for us to connect through this virtual way. We can't pretend to be so professional and so perfect, or pretend to be whatever you think you need to be to win that job or to be memorable. You just need to be yourself, because you're going to be the best you possible. So that could hopefully take some weight off your shoulders. You don't have to try and be something. You just have to be you and let that come through, because people want to know who they're going to work with, and they're interviewing you to know what you're about. They're trying to get to know you. So be yourself. And Lee, you had a question about eye contact. So I debated about putting eye contact on here. Typically when I'm coaching my architects about interviewing for a project with a client, like an agency or a developer, I ask them to look straight into the pinhole camera, and which is what I'm doing now.
But it's so awkward because you can't see the person. So you're like a robot. It's a very bizarre phenomenon that I think about a lot.
Yeah, I decided not to advise that, because you're right. You're looking into the camera. You're not able to get any feedback on the faces that you're seeing. I think it's better if you can see the, like what Tony was saying, body language is difficult to read via Zoom. If you're looking at your camera, you're not going to read any cues or clues. Sometimes you can see that people are not paying attention to you, or you can tell when people are scrolling on their email or checking their phone. Anyway, people can tell a lot from watching the screen. And I think if it's okay if you don't look right at the pinhole of the camera. In this case, you want to get feedback from who you're speaking to. So I just say, try to have confident body language. Particular colors you recommend wearing on camera. I think it just depends on your background. So if you have good lighting, you can wear any colors you want, because you're not necessarily going to blend into your background. But if you're in a dark space, or you want to be differentiated from your background somehow, and I recommend comfortable sweats for the bottom and a nice top. That's what I'm sporting today, but no particular colors. Be you. Heidi, that was Heidi, right? Yeah, Heidi, I'm sure you would have these you love to wear color, and so wear color, bright colors, like what Lee's wearing today. Fantastic. And I love that red blazer. That's what it looks like. What are your thoughts on branded backgrounds? Absolutely. This is our chance to make an impression, and especially on Friday, for example, if you have 2 minutes to 3 minutes with someone, it's okay to have a branded background. So if you're a student, brand your background with your name, and sort of your specialty, what your byline might say on LinkedIn. We'll talk about the LinkedIn byline or the resume byline shortly. But you are always branding. You are always sort of selling yourself, and that's not a bad thing, but you need to be aware of personal branding. We'll switch to that in a bit. So I say yes. I say use a branded background, but first figure out what your personal brand is, and then always be on brand. Let's see. Solid, bright colors. Yes, it's memorable, and you pop against that white wall. So I agree, for sure, Lee. Non-confident body language looks like, yes. Convey non-confidence. I see a lot of people slouching on Zoom, and like not today, but I'm just saying over the year. MJ's like, what? Let me just like readjust here. I see, but that's noticeable. Like this is sometimes I see this in Zoom, right? People, and if you're in a project manage, if you're in your meetings in the office, it's fine. But if you want to, if you're networking, if you're meeting people, if you're interviewing, good posture. So yeah, non-confident body language would be slouching, hunched shoulders, looking down. If as much as possible, if you can get yourself looking close to the camera, like I said, it's helpful to have feedback from who's on your screen, but as much as possible, you don't want to be looking away, because that can kind of send a different message too, but you can't always avoid that depending on your monitor. So I hope that answered the question, Susan. Personal branding, yes, this is my favorite. And this is something I only really learned a few years ago. And I take this with me everywhere I go. Be it till you see it. What does that mean anything to anybody? As opposed to fake it till you make it. This is be it till you see it, not fake it. So where I'm coming from with this is, let's say you want to play piano and you always wished you were a piano player, or you always wished you were a drummer and you always wanted to learn to play the drums, which is me. I always wished I learned how to play the drums, but I play piano. And I decided one day I want to learn how to play the drums, and I started taking classes. And I thought to myself, oh, well, yeah, I'm trying. For a couple years, I kept saying, I'm trying to be a drummer. I'm trying to learn how to be a drummer. But then at one point it hit me, wait a minute, I can do a lot of things that drummers do. I'm actively drumming. I'm actively playing this instrument. I am a drummer. I'm not necessarily the best drummer out there. I'm not, going to go on stage. Well, I do perform now, but back then, I'm not a master drummer, for example, but I am a drummer. I'm just maybe a drummer in this stage of my career. So let's say if you want to be a principal architect, or you want to, even more broadly, I want to be an architect. I want to be a licensed architect who's actively designing buildings and making an impact on the community with built environment. Well, you don't have to say that you're trying to do that and that you're on your way to do that, or you're working towards that. You are that. And that's what personal branding is putting out there on your LinkedIn, your resume, your portfolio, your Zoom background, and in everything that you say. You are an architect. You are making an impact with the work you do. You just haven't had a chance yet maybe to work on that many projects, or maybe you've only done it in school, or maybe you've only done it for small single family custom residences and not a big conference center. But you are an architect who is doing that. So reframe your mindset to think, I'm not trying to be this, I am this. And we can talk more detail a little bit later about it in LinkedIn. I don't have a visual here, but in LinkedIn, where it shows your byline, where most people put their title of their job. That should not be the title of your job. That should be how you see yourself and how you want people to see yourself. So my LinkedIn title says that I'm a relationship builder, I'm a speaker, I'm a mentor. And I put those things out there because that's how I want people to see me. And that's what I want to be, but that's also what I am. And when I put those words in, actually, Lee, I put those words in my byline after this first speaking opportunity I ever had, which was an opportunity you gave me to speak about business development 2 years ago for the AIA. I had never done a speaking presentation, and I was scared for my life to get in front of any group. But I put that in, oh, you're right, Miley, I'll talk about the California Architects Board in a second. Got me there. But I put that in my byline as a way of putting it out there and saying, I am this. I'm not a great speaker, not yet, but I am this. And I'm probably gonna make mistakes, I'm gonna fumble, I'm gonna fail maybe here and there, but that's part of the journey to being a speaker. So anyway, and here we are today, and now I have lots of opportunities to speak, and it's fun. I love sharing what I've learned because it's a process for all of us. And absolutely, you cannot call yourself an architect. I've corrected so many students about that over the years. But you can't, unless you have your license from California Architecture Board, CAB, right? And you can't say architectural this or architectural that. It's very specific. However, depending on where you want to go in your career, and I don't know, Miley, if you want to share a little bit, you can. If you're interested in sort of managing projects, or if you're interested in being a designer, or if you're interested in being a principal, maybe. Is there something more specific in terms of the role that you want to play in your career? And you can put that out there. And in pursuit of an architectural license, a lot of people put candidate for an architectural license, or there are lots of ways that you can phrase that to avoid calling yourself an architect, but you can sometimes with the byline, you can also even just say a phrase. Remember, the byline is not your job title. The byline is your chance to brand yourself for how you want to be seen, how you want an employer to see you. In my case, it's how I want my clients to see me, and so this is, oh, I share this, I go a lot deeper into this because we don't have a lot of time today, but I did a podcast about this topic. And you can, if you're interested in hearing more, you can check that out. Maybe I'll drop the link in a little bit later if you don't want to type it up. So let's see, you work as a designer, but an immigrant don't have an additional, so you have an additional step toward the license. Yes, so well, we can, and I'm happy to talk to anybody here after this if you want to kind of dig into it a little bit more. What can I say? How can I position myself? Or we can even just chat for a few minutes about what kind of job you're trying to get, and how should I brand myself to be ready for that type of job, or to take my career to that place. There's no formula. It's what's right for you, and it's where you want your career to go. So I guess there's a lot of bigger questions you have to ask yourself first in terms of self-reflection. I'm not sure you can call yourself an architectural designer. You might want to double check CAB website. Using architecture in any form, unless you are licensed, especially in California with that extra step, there might be an issue, but maybe that's changed since the last time that I've had to deal with that.
I thought it was just for like businesses, like you can't use architecture in a business name, but I could be wrong. I think you're right. Like check CAB. I know, like I in the state of New York, but not the state of California yet. And so I'm still learning all of California's ways. But I know that the same is true in New York as California. You can't say architect if you're not licensed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but unless they've updated that, if you use architect in any form, architectural, architecture, architecting, you know, that you could be liable for breaking that rule. But double check, it's a quick Google if somebody wants to get on it right now. Okay, now selling is something that I want everybody to toss out the window, because selling just gets a bad rap. You know, that car salesman guy or girl, the misdemeanor punishable by a fine. Okay. Yep, thank you. Selling gets a bad rap. When you get that telemarketer call, you know, somebody trying to sell you something, you just don't have time. That's not what we do. That's never what we intend to do. In my case, and I do business development, I'm not selling my architecture firm. I'm looking for ways that I can help the people that need an architect. And I'm bringing those skills, and I'm bringing awareness to the team that I have, or the projects that we've done that will most likely be able to help those specific clients. So it never feels like selling when I'm doing that in particular. But in relation to the interview, in context of the interview, we have to speak up for ourselves. And this might even be important for in any case throughout your career. If we don't advocate for ourselves, who will? We just did a big symposium this morning for our Women's Leadership Initiative about the people in our lives who have mentored us or sponsored us, meaning sponsor someone who's in a higher position who advocates for you, who gives you an opportunity, who says, I see potential in this person. I want to give them an opportunity to work on the next big project or to lead this initiative. That is amazing when that happens, but it won't always happen. So often we need to make sure we're advocating for ourselves. We're talking about the value we can bring, and don't feel shy about it. Think of it as, think of it as putting yourself in the interviewer's place. What would you be looking for? And then you can think to yourself, well, do I have these qualities? Make sure you communicate those qualities, those characteristics, that drive, whatever it is about you that's fantastic and amazing. Make sure you communicate it. It's not a bad thing to advocate for yourself at all. Some questions. People always ask this, and it came up on the panel earlier today. What questions can you ask the interviewer? This is a really common one. Can you describe some attributes of a successful candidate for this position? So if I'm the interviewer and someone asks me that, I'm going to end up describing the exact type of person that I want. I want a candidate who's going to take initiative, who's going to be proactive, who's going to be continuously learning, who's going to, whatever it is I say, you're taking all those mental notes, and then whatever you say next, you can frame it in that. Well, here's how I take initiative. Here's how I am continuously learning and pushing. Here's how I am perfect for the job and now you have specific ways to substantiate it. And you know how to, it's sort of like making sure you ask this question. It helps you figure out exactly what that interviewer is looking for. And then you can sell yourself or advocate for yourself about how you fit that role. This is exactly how I fit that role. And then they can say, good, check, check, check. And then if they liked your vibe, your personality, if there's a cultural match, a lot of firms want that cultural personality fit, which is why I always remind everyone to be yourself. Then that's success. Hopefully that successfully wins the job. Do you guys, what are the top 2 or 3 questions you hope they don't ask you? This is something I wanted to turn back to the group. And for context, in the industry, when architects, engineers, contractors, when we interview for $1 million jobs, $1 billion jobs, we spend hours on this bullet point. We put our heads together and say, what question are we most afraid they're gonna ask? Oh, we don't have experience in doing stadiums, but we're interviewing to build the next stadium. We hope they don't ask about our lack of experience in that one, so, and then you can train yourself. You rehearse to be ready for that question, because if you're afraid they're gonna ask about the fact that you have no studio experience, for example, meaning if you're a student right now, 5th year, and you haven't had an internship with studio experience, and you're afraid they're gonna ask about that, well, think about how you might respond and rehearse it. It's just another way you can be a little quicker on your feet and be more composed, because they will ask questions that you hope they don't ask. Someone also asked this morning, asked that same question about what are some things you can ask the interviewer. One thing I asked the president of my firm when I got this job was, I said, what is your vision for HPI architecture? And he had to pause and he had to think for just a beat, and then he went on and talked for like 10 minutes about his vision for the firm. And I said, okay, now do your principals and directors believe that? Are they, basically, are they drinking that Kool-Aid is kind of what I asked. And he really had to think, and we ended up having a really good conversation. It was just me and him on the phone. And anyway, I mean, I accepted the job. I liked his answer. I liked his vision. And, but when you ask questions about where the company's going, what's the goal of that firm, where are they heading, or what challenges do they foresee for themselves? You know, as you absolutely can ask that question, what challenge do you have coming up for your education market? And those are really great questions to ask your interviewer. So let's see, candidates are cautioned that offering or providing architectural services are using, okay, again, architecture, yes. Then Michael, you said, what's your biggest weakness? Yeah, so if that's something you're worried they might ask, what's your biggest weakness? There's always ways that you can turn that question around. Have you all heard of SWOT? So SWOT meaning strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And it's a very typical business practice where we, as we're looking at different projects to pursue, as we're looking at hiring more staff, as we're looking at strategic planning for the entire business for the next 5 years, we do a SWOT analysis. So strengths and weaknesses, calling out your strengths and knowing exactly what you do well is important. Calling out your weaknesses, or the things that you don't have quite the tools that you are missing, meaning it doesn't have to be a weakness. Don't think of it as a weakness. Think of it as something you don't have yet in your tool belt. And if you rephrase it like that, that's totally okay. So if someone says, what's your biggest weakness? And I say, well, one thing I'm not well-versed in is writing RFPs, for example. I know that might be a part of this job in the future. I know some architects have to write RFPs, and that's something that I could improve upon. That's something that I definitely could build, a skill that you want to always put it in a positive framing. That's a skill I can continue to build. That's a skill that I want to continue building. You know, those are some examples of how to rephrase a weakness, as opposed to saying, well, yeah, I'm terrible at writing emails. You know, you phrase it in the positive. And how you can, and then share a strategy on how you're working on it. Share a strategy on how you're building on that weakness. You know what I'm saying? And I think the last topic I have here is due diligence. Due diligence is so important for everything. I always say you always want to be prepared before you go into any meeting, any interview, any situation, as much as you can be prepared. And knowing your audience. So how I speak to my kids is different from how I speak to my friends, is different from how I speak to a group of professionals here, and is different how I speak to somebody I'm interviewing with. So if in the context of interviewing for a job, find out everything you can about them, their culture, their projects, what market sectors are they in, what do they care about. If you can find out who's in the interview, it's an easy ask. You just call and say, oh, who am I interviewing with? Oh my gosh, you can go on LinkedIn, you can find out where those people went to school, what they care about, what organizations they're part of, what kind of projects they worked on. And you can, one, just be prepared knowing who you're going to interview with. That just helps with your confidence a little bit, going into the room. But you can also prepare to ask thoughtful questions like, well, yeah, just say that someone went to school where you went to school. You wouldn't have known that without looking that up, but you can bring that up, and then immediately sometimes people from the same school have a certain camaraderie. So there's lots of ways that you can, I guess, connect with people and maybe ask thoughtful questions when you know a little bit more about who you're interviewing with. And we do this for every project we interview on. For those of us in the industry that interview for projects, absolutely, I know everything about every person that is going to be on that interview committee or the selection panel. It's helpful. It's helpful in fine-tuning your message, so you make sure that that audience can hear it. Let's see. Do interviewers and employers check out social media? Yes, they do check out social media. Case in point, I research every single channel that I can about when I'm either interviewing somebody for a job or interviewing for somebody for a project. When regarding separating personal brand and private, yes, that's a question that's unique to each of you that you would answer for yourself. And I'd say if you're asking that question, yes, you should separate. If you're wondering if I should separate the two. Over the years, I've kept everything separate. I've kept all my social media channels private. But I guess over the years, as I've come into realizing what my personal brand is, what I care about, who I am, you know, me, Marissa, I care, it does cross over. I care about mentorship. I care about helping people with the skills that I have. I care about certain things that are relevant to the media, to the industry, as well as to my personal network, because I want to help my personal network too. So there are some things that I share to both channels and some things that I only share to private channels. So you can use discretion for that. Let's see. And then finally, I just want to hit this home again. Everything is relationships in this industry. People want to work with you if they, I mean, one, they have to know who you are, but they need to like and trust you. People do business with people who they like and who they trust. Somebody who they know is going to have their back, look out for them. Somebody they know who's going to be honest. Or, you know, as an architect, our clients know that if we screw up, because sometimes things go wrong on a job, and that's completely normal. There's always unexpected things that come up, and things happen. It's what you do about that. It's how you go forward and address that. So we want to make sure clients trust us to be there for them. When it comes to you, if you're just meeting somebody and you want to just start, you're just starting to build your network, same thing. Be yourself. Just try to connect with people. Again, take the time to understand people. Find a way that you can be helpful. Even if you don't think you can be helpful, maybe you can be helpful with a contact. Maybe you can connect them to someone you know. Maybe you can just be a resource for them on a certain subject that you know about that they might need in the future. So that's just a couple of things I wanted to share, and want to hear more from you. Sorry I talked so much. So what questions came up for you, or what is something you're really interested in preparing for on Friday that you're still feeling uncertain about?
Do we have any students that are attending the career fair on Friday? You can raise your hand, or you can feel free to speak up. Okay, okay, good.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, given the career fair and many times that we go across for a virtual platform, you're often given just 3 minutes time. So, how do you connect with a person just in such a short period of time when you have to tell your elevator pitch, and then you kind of do not get time that you build a connection? I do get that we can send, a thank you letter saying that you at least sought out to meet us, but then how exactly do you start making that connection in such a small time?
Yeah, that's difficult. And I'd say you use that time to, one, if you have what you want to communicate in a short elevator pitch, meaning if you can say, this is me, this is what I'm looking for. And I'd say add the intention of what you want to get out of that particular meeting. So let's say you're coming to HPI Architecture to my room on Friday. And let's say you've already checked the firm out and you want a job there for whatever reason, because you really want to do senior living, because not many firms do senior living. So you'd say, can I connect with you? Can I email you and set up a time to get coffee later? what I would do is just go straight to, how can I get a meeting with you? How can I get some time either for a phone call, or, because you're right, you cannot, in that such a short span of time, there's not much chance for an in-depth conversation, but you can kind of state your piece and then ask for more time, and either connect with, like, if it's me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll always say yes. Anybody who asks me for a meeting or for a call, I always say yes. Even the telemarketers who are trying to sell lights to my, I always say, and I especially always say yes to students. So ask for that time and get another chance. Ask for another opportunity to talk in a longer time.
I had another question. When you told us to research about who's going to interview us, many a times the HR representative of the firm just sends out an email saying that, okay, we are scheduling a thing, are you free this time or not? But then we actually don't get to know who exactly is interviewing us. So is it okay as a first-time person who's going to be interviewed with them to ask them who exactly is going to be on the panel, who is going to be present during the interview?
Yeah, did you say that your recruiter was setting
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Like if a HR person for human resource department of that
HR, yeah.
firm.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100%. You should ask. And I'm sure they would be happy to tell you. That's a normal question.
I could just jump in here really quickly. So this is the first time the AIA San Diego's done its career fair, which we've done for, I think, 7 years running now. It's the first time we've done it virtually. It's also the first time we've done it with appointments. And so it's a little tricky. I know the time slots are really short. What we did was look at our attendance from previous years in terms of employers and then students, and try to kind of divvy it up that 3-hour block so that as many students as possible could have an opportunity. But since you guys are here on this call, you guys are special, you're insiders, so let me give you some tips. If you've signed up, great. I would recommend, again, because we're kind of playing this by ear and we've never done it before, if you sign up for a slot that you see other order numbers in, move yourself to a slot where no one else is in, because chances are, if you're the only one in that 10-minute block, you might be able to luxuriate that whole time with the employer. So I would definitely recommend doing that. And then one more insider tip. I don't know exactly who's hiring, but I do know that DZN, who is on the list, has 2 positions that are open. So that's a good tip. And then last but not least, I think what we're going to try to do, Marissa, HPI has a Zoom room, and that's, I think your colleague's hosting that, but we were thinking about doing a sort of safe space room that you guys don't need an appointment for, that you can just jump in and ask any question you want, or if you're struggling with something, and we'll be there for you the whole time. So that'll be really fun, I think.
Yeah.
Could I ask you a question following up to what you just said about the career fair on Friday?
Yeah.
I've registered online for like the first 2 sessions that are free, and I haven't seen anywhere to like schedule for the actual interviews or anything. So I'm not sure how that's supposed to work, because I haven't seen anything about it. I've just seen that you're supposed to register for times.
You got a link in response to your Eventbrite registration. We sent that out automatically, and then I think proactively. MJ, Michael, jump in here, tell me. But we can send it to you, Elizabeth. There's a link, and there's a shared document that you want to sign up for. Okay.
I looked at the emails and I couldn't find anything, but I'll take another look and see if I just missed.
Well, you can, I'll put my info in the chat here.
Sorry, if you want to just put your email in the chat, I can send you that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Elizabeth, about whether to share portfolios or not, if you only have 2 to 3 minutes, if that's what you want to be the lasting impression with that person, and you've already, I guess, so there's a lot of research you're going to have to do up front with the firms that you planned to drop in and see. If you're scheduling and you know which firms are going to drop in to meet, then tailor whatever you show or whatever you say to whatever, what do you want out of that connection? Are you really just trying to meet more people and you want to talk to more employers, or do you really want a job with this one company? And so I guess whether or not to show is different in different situations. What are some other questions or things that you're worried about? Yes, yeah, and I touched on this earlier, a student with no professional experience. So somebody who, and I guess I need a little more information if you know what kind of position you're looking for. If it's hard when you're looking for any position, and in that case, it's in that case where you're not sure which industry, which part of the architecture industry you want to go into, which market sector or which job type, then you should position yourself as an emerging professional, somebody who is looking to gain experience in several different fields and several different roles. And some firms, like our firm, we hire emerging professionals who don't always have experience, and we kind of make them do the rounds. So you get like 6 weeks in the design studio, then you get 6 weeks assisting a project manager in production, then you get 6 weeks in the field with the CA team. So we kind of put you through the rounds so you can try on different hats. And so that's true of maybe the first 10 years, maybe 20 years of your career. You're going to try on a lot of different hats, and you're going to realize this job's not for me. Or you're going to then eventually you stumble on, this feels right. I'm meant to be a designer, or I'm meant to be a CA, construction admin, and I'm meant to be working in the field doing RFIs and problem solving actively on the job site. You know, some people find that out only through the process of discovery. So emerging professional.
Can I just say, like, I wouldn't worry about that if you're a student, because I went to the career fair a couple of years ago and found that, like, I was one of very few people that wasn't a student. And so I think they're expecting students, and they definitely anticipate seeing you, and they cater to you. They want to know what you did in school, and they're excited and interested in your portfolio. And so don't worry about it. They don't expect you to have experience. Like, they understand. They once also were in school looking for a job. So it's okay. It's going to be okay.
100%.
Yeah, that's really good feedback, Elizabeth. Thank you. The chapter AI San Diego has been putting on this career fair in conjunction with Woodbury and New School. So it really is majority students attending. I think this year might be a little bit different just because of economic conditions. I think we may have, different levels of career folks with, as job seekers. So it'll be mixed, but it's predominantly students.
And play up your strengths, meaning what can you bring to the firm? Remember that time earlier we were talking about the value you can bring. So if, as Elizabeth mentioned, yes, they're expecting students. As an emerging professional, if I'm hiring someone for that role, I'm not expecting them to have all the experience. The point of that role is to give them all those different experiences. So we want to know, what are the things that you do bring to the table? What are those things that you can't teach someone? There are a lot of things that you can't teach someone on the job. Is being proactive and taking initiative, being responsive. I mean, you can learn how to do those things better from experience and mentors on different jobs, but a lot of that stuff comes, you have value that you can bring and showcase that value.
Thank you.
I would also add on, just when you're interviewing and looking for a job, just to keep going. I think I went on 12 interviews before I landed at TSA Construction. You just keep banging on those doors, and that was hard for me because I had a little one at the time, and it was just paying for daycare and all of that, as well as hitting my head against the wall. But I think you just keep searching, and you just don't give up, and just keep going on talk to as many people that will interview you.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what is the market like right now with the last year of COVID? And I mean, I know a lot of people have been furloughed or been laid off, but does anybody have any idea what the market is like in San Diego right now?
Do you want to take that one, Marissa, or do you want me to?
Well, I'm sure we have two different perspectives. It depends on the market sector. So if it's an architecture firm that did a lot of retail and hospitality, they probably have laid off a lot. Our firm does education and housing. So we're still hiring like crazy, and we've been growing. So I think it depends on what markets those firms are in. But Lee, what is it from your perspective?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We had, large firms that focused on retail and hospitality with significant layoffs at the beginning of COVID and then a few other rounds. The firms that are doing institutional work or government work, those are kind of longer term timelines. So they're still padded and insulated, although I do question a little bit what's going to happen in the next couple quarters if some of that work ends and then new opportunities don't emerge. I hope that won't be the case. I hope we get back in there and get it going again. And then our residential firms, so smaller firms that focus on custom residential, super duper busy. So and healthcare, same thing. So it's a total mix out there. And I think what's good about the career fair on Friday, we're really covered by a big variety of different types of firms. So it's a good opportunity for you whether you're a job seeker or not, just to get to know the market. And that's kind of one of the main intentions of the career fair. I think it's more, if anything, it's an exploratory exercise for you to get to know who's out there for your future, even if it's not right this moment that you're actively looking to get employed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lee, that reminds me, one more thing to share, if anyone has to drop off, is if you don't know what type of role you want or what type of architecture firm you want, and you're sort of just, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. A great thing you can do is network, meet people. You use the opportunity like these career fairs, but you can also go on LinkedIn and you can say, I think I'm interested in designing, this type of thing, and look for firms that do that. Call them up and say, could I talk to you for 30 minutes? Could we go for a cup of coffee? And just pick their brain, learn from them. And I did that when I was trying to change from, office work to business development. I went and took a bunch of business development people out to lunch, and I just tried to understand what they did. What does a day in the life of a business development person do? What's your job like? How do you do your job? And asking those questions can kind of help give you a sense for if that might be right for you or not.
Leah, are you still doing the coffees, the women in architect coffees via online? Because I think that would be something that would be really good for some of these younger architects to.
Yeah, Heidi's talking about our Women in Architecture Committee groups. There were 2 coffee meetups they organized on, correct me if I'm wrong, Tuesday mornings, I want to say. They stopped for a while. They're back, or at least they plan to be back. At the last Women in Architecture monthly meeting, there was kind of overwhelming consensus that folks wanted those back again. And I think there's a group that had organized a North County one at Better Buzz and Encinitas, and then the San Diego one was at, although I don't, they won't be in person anymore, so forget that. But I think there are still 2 separate groups that'll be doing the meetups and getting them back up and running if they haven't already. MJ, do you know have we posted anything?
There was an email. There was an email that went out a couple weeks ago that said they started back up like 2 weeks ago, I think, on Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m.
Okay.
I think that
Good.
you could, I can't remember. There was like, you could click on something and you'd find a Zoom link to it. I haven't had a chance to be like ready for a Zoom meeting at 7 a.m. right now yet. I have a young daughter, and so I'm typically like making a breakfast at that moment.
Yeah, for sure. But
But
Heidi's right. That's it's such a good opportunity to be sort of on equal playing ground with professionals of all experience levels. So, and it's casual and it's a nice way to make a connection. So I would say any event like that. I mean, I think even this meeting today is kind of a good example, as I mentioned when I started, that you're surrounded by practitioners of different levels, and you're all at the same table asking questions. And I just think that's such a unique opportunity. So seize it, whether it's, at this networking session or the WIA coffee meetups or other events. I would say do your best to if you make an initial connection, make it last. So for example, at the career fair, we'll give you a list of who the names of the representatives from different employers, and then you can follow up. We totally encourage you to follow up with them via email, but you could also find them on LinkedIn, write them a nice note. Hey, we talked at the Career Expo. Let's connect. And then that way you've established something that maybe can last into the future instead of just that brief moment. And
you can practice that right here with me. I put my LinkedIn. So do it. I just remember what I talked about. Be it. Just be a networker. You don't have to be good at networking, but you can be networking right now, meaning you can take that, connect with me and say, thanks, whatever, let's connect. If something you want to learn about more, I'm happy to talk to you. Do that with anybody. Start building your network. Start attending more industry things like this. And because it's actually a really small world, this industry.
Yeah.
And people, we see I don't know. It's just a small world in this industry. So build your network now and start making relationships. Yeah, that would be 7 a.m. I don't know. I could try one day.
I used to go. They were great, and I could actually make it. It's almost harder that it's on Zoom, but that's no one's fault. That's just the world we're in right now. So I think it's awesome that they started it back up, and hopefully people are participating. I hope to soon or one day again.
That was something that we talked about at the last Women in Architecture monthly meeting, is that we know that the schedules are different for everyone. For a while, we thought lunchtime worked really well for most of our practitioners, but lately I've heard that, no, I can never do lunch. I'm always slammed. So what we're trying to do is morning programming, midday programming, and then evening programming, so that all of us with our different lives and our different schedules can try to get some, to some of them.
Since it is on Zoom, it'd be easier, in my opinion, to have a coffee earlier, or a little later, like 8 or 9, just so that since everyone is kind of working from home or driving in, I am driving in. But
yeah, so, okay, if anybody wants to continue following up, or if there was something you didn't feel comfortable asking about here with it in this room, one, I want to remind you, you can ask anything here, and you should get used to asking things that that might show that you're not super expert. It's okay. Nobody's expecting any of us to be experts on anything at this point. So try to feel okay to ask those questions, and absolutely you can ask me offline or connect with me on LinkedIn to ask me any more specific questions. Or Lee, I know Lee would be a great resource as well.
Yeah, I'm putting my info into the chat. There we go.
All right, and I mentioned if you were interested in that podcast, you'll find a link here talking about personal branding. So I put everything that I want to share with the world in this, and it's a mix of personal and professional, because I want to be able to be me. I want to put myself in a situation where I could be my whole self, and I want to be that in my job. I want to be that all the time. But you're right, it's not everything. I won't share everything with everyone, but that's just an example. But thank you for everyone for coming today and for asking good questions and making the conversation very interactive.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And thanks Marissa for dedicating your time to this. I hope you guys will stop by and say hi to us. I'm not sure how we'll disseminate that link. Maybe Michael, we can add it to the schedule. You don't have to schedule yourself though. So we'll try to share with all the registrants the link to our Zoom that we'll keep open on Friday. Yeah, I think it's really nice that you guys turned your cameras on, by the way. It's much harder to have an engaging meeting. Like at the beginning of this meeting, we had a lot of cameras off, so it's really nice to see your faces.
Quick question. Can you go to Michael's question? What do you do if you don't quite have a portfolio ready?
Oh, sorry, we missed that. Yeah, if you don't have a portfolio ready yet.
Or if it's not, the best portfolio.
Right, you don't want to show something that's not your best.
Yeah, it's
right?
in the works, but
Yes.
not yet.
Yeah, I mean, in a short time frame like that, 2 to 3 minutes, it's probably not the best idea to share your portfolio. You want to connect, make a connection, get across what it is you're looking for, and ask a specific question to that particular employer that is going to help you connect. Meaning if it's an education, somebody who designs schools, say, I'm really interested in building schools. These are what I did several projects on this, and I want to know if you are hiring, blah, blah, blah. So you can this can be very direct on Friday. if it's very short time. If you have more time with them, then you can get to know them a little more. You can ask more questions. You can share portfolio if you have it, but don't feel like you're at a loss or at a step back if you don't have your portfolio ready just yet. You don't have to show it.
What do you recommend doing if they ask for it?
Say, are you looking?
Maybe not like Friday, but afterwards.
Yes. Afterwards. I mean, yeah, my first answer was going to be, well, absolutely. It's an acceptable response to say, I don't have that now. I mean, I don't have that here today and I can send it to you. What email address can I send it to you? And are you looking more for renderings? Are you looking more for examples of my technical drawings, like a CD set, a construction document set, if you have it? So I would ask a specific question of, what are you interested in seeing so that I can make sure my portfolio includes those elements, and where can I send it? And I'll follow up after this and send it. And then you get to hustle over the weekend to get it together.
Could he also just put together like a sample page or two? Like you don't need to like show him or her, I should really just say him or her, everything you've ever done, right? Like, and I don't feel like most employers are going to go through a 20-page portfolio that you send via online, but like if you give them a couple sample pages of your highlights, and then if they invite you for an interview that's longer, more one-on-one, then have the bigger portfolio.
Yes, that's possible.
Especially don't feel overwhelmed. I don't know.
Right. Especially if you don't have something done yet. Elizabeth, that's a great point, is if you are, if your portfolio was like 75% done and you could get the full thing ready, tailoring it to what that employer was looking for. But if you are starting from zero, then, and that's not possible because you're still working on projects, that's a good point. Showcase what you do have. As Elizabeth said, I think that's fine. But make sure you're showcasing something that is a good example of the work you can do. Quality over quantity. Did we get everyone's questions? I think so. All right, well, I'm sure I'll see all of you on Friday. If you're dropping by, I'll be in one of the rooms. And
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you. Thanks, everyone.
right, have a good one.
Bye. Be well.
Bye.
Thanks, Marissa.
Yeah, no problem. This was fun.
Super fun. Yeah.
Thank you, Marissa.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, I think that
If you're up for it.
Yeah, I think this is very relevant. I mean, everything I talked about today is relevant for people throughout their entire career. We just can spin it differently depending on who the audience is for, but I'm sure people would appreciate this ongoing. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I think it's great. I loved what you were saying about like advertising yourself. Yeah, I thought that this was very helpful. I've got notes.
I changed my LinkedIn byline during the meeting.
To what?
What did I put? Something like
I changed mine too.
You did?
I took
Yeah,
out architectural
I had
designer.
my title in there.
Nicely.
I'm gonna stop the recording because sorry.